Keto cheddar biscuits. I'm going to structure this a little bit differently than I normally do. Let me start out by saying, firstly, if you don't want to use buttermilk in your biscuit recipe, I suggest that you just don't even bother to make the recipe at all. Because simply, I'll break that down as far as when I go into the video, but there's a reason that buttermilk is used. Now, the only exception that I can see is if you want to use almond milk or flaxseed, macadamia nut, a nut milk in place of the buttermilk. But even then, you're gonna have different results because there's no fat in those. And to be honest, I can't think I don't know anyone personally to sit here and drink almond milk and be like, I should make a biscuit out of this. So I don't really see it possible. But let's go ahead and move on to the recipe. Now you got two different options here when you want to preheat your oven. Now you can go with 350 or you can go with 400 degrees Fahrenheit. The reason there's two different temperatures is because it produces two different types of biscuits. You can have a golden biscuit or you can have a more authentic biscuit, but it's gonna be like extra light skin, like it's not gonna be golden brown, The interior of it is gonna be perfect. It's gonna be just like a regular biscuit. But see, if you bake it any longer than that or at a higher temperature to achieve that golden brown texture, that golden brown color, what's gonna happen is it's gonna start to dry out the biscuit more on the inside. And the crumbs that tend to clump together a little bit. But if you care more about appearance than actual taste and flavor, then go with the 400 degrees. These ingredients are super simple. Start out with 1.5 cup of almond flour. Blanched to be exact because you don't want any husk in there. And I do recommend sifting this almond flour because it does tend to clump up together. Well, almond flour does anyway. 3 tablespoons of coconut flour. 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Now, why so much salt in the recipe? I've tested several different volumes of salt from 1/8 teaspoon, 1/4, 1/2, a whole. Anything less than 1/2, the biscuits tend to be very bland tasting. 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 2 large eggs, and 1/2 cup of buttermilk. So, is buttermilk keto? Well, if you've been doing keto for a while, you already know that any food is ketogenic. Because that's not really what you classify food as is keto. But for the new people, buttermilk is fine. A full cup of buttermilk is 12 grams carbs. Now, I only use 1/2 cup in the entire recipe. Now, I'm sure there's somebody out there that could probably drink a full cup of buttermilk to the head, but okay. If that's what you want to do. If you're gonna do the keto diet, I wouldn't recommend drinking a cup of buttermilk by itself. No, but to add it to your recipe is perfectly fine that way. It gets distributed amongst the entire recipe. As I said, the entire recipe, this buttermilk simply added 6 grams of carbs and a whole lot of flavor. As you see in the video, I dug my hands in there with a glove on and I just, mixed it all together. In the batter, after you finish mixing it, it's gonna be mushy a little bit, but it'll cling together at the same time. And you can use a spoon if you don't wanna put your hand in there. A simple spoon is just fine. You don't need to whisk it together with a hand mixer or even a whisk itself. Especially a whisk, it's probably gonna get caught up in the little grooves and just be hard to clean up. So after you do that, toss in 1/2 cup of cheddar cheese. Shredded cheddar cheese, sharp to be exact. Now, if you want to get funky with it or whatever, you can try whatever kind of cheese you want that you shredded yourself. That'll be just fine. That's definitely one area where you can customize it yourself, but removing the buttermilk, nah. So what you want to do at this point is you want to start to form the biscuits themselves. You want to go with about 1.5 tablespoons full of batter in your hand, or dough, I guess you can call it, and simply roll it up and then pat it down and then place it on top of your baking pan. One thing about these is they won't spread outward, but they will come up. And regardless of the temperature, whether you chose 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 400, you bake them for 20 minutes. Depending on your oven, you may be able to pull them out at 15 if your oven tends to run a little hotter. But for my video, I baked them at 350 degrees and I went for about 25 minutes, to be honest. So let's see how they taste. So we got the buttermilk biscuits here. Cheddar biscuits, all right? In order to take photos with these, I made them extra dark, so they would stand out better. They would have that golden color. Just cracking it open, and the texture looks a little different. Like it looks a little drier. So they're definitely drier. But if you tend to like, you know, more of the Popeye style biscuits, leave it in there long and let it get golden. But what I noticed is my first batch, when I got it right, and I was like, this is the recipe, got it. They weren't golden at all. They were actually kind of pale looking. You know, somebody tagged me on Instagram and they make my keto pumpkin muffins. They found them delicious, but they said they made them twice. They said because the first time they were too light for them, but the second time they turned the heat up to get them dark. See, the odd thing about keto is everything isn't gonna come over the same way. You're gonna get a golden brown or you're gonna get a golden brown color quicker with other things. Now these flours tend to cook pretty fast, but you know, when you add other things in there, they just don't. The faster cook will give you more of a crispier outside. So you can turn the oven up to 400 and then have a softer inside, but I mean, is a biscuit really like that? You know? The biscuits I've had, the outside tended to be softer along with the inside, you know, it tended to be uniform. Now with my keto pound cake that I made, the outside was crunchy and the inside was soft. But that worked very, very well for a pound cake. But for a biscuit, you know, I mean, it's not bread, you know, I mean, but if that's the route you want to go, I think that far better being lighter than darker. And at 350, just leave them in there for 15 minutes. That, I mean, that produced an amazing biscuit, like, you know. But I don't know, people like them darker. People like them darker. They're cheesy. Feel free to add more cheese if you like, but I think this works well. You can smell the cheese coming off of them, but the buttermilk does outweigh the cheese a little bit. You can top it off with cheese if you like. You can spread butter across the top of it, you know. I think those things would just, you know, make it more of what you're used to. But hey, you got a base, and I say run with it. The base is A1. A1. So for those that came for the biscuit, that's it. That's all I got for you. And I thank you for coming. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Now, for the OGs out there, for the ones that's been around, let's talk about this thing for a second, all right? So, if you've been with me for a while, you know I had like an old biscuit recipe. Like, matter of fact, let's check it out real fast. Now, I wasn't sure if they would rise or not, so I formed them in two different ways. One way worked better than the other. The other way, they look like little frisbees. Look at them. Try this little flat one out for you. That poor baby. But this was a while ago, and you know what? I've grown since then. Won't he do it? I used to be like big on xanthan gum, but xanthan gum in baking recipes, it doesn't work as well as I would like it to. I use it as a tool for when I need something to have like more of a chewy texture to it. But I mean, I have beef gelatin powder for that now too. So in my last biscuit recipe, and my Red Lobster Cheddar Bay biscuit recipe, I use xanthan gum. I definitely want to get rid of that. If you're new to it, I would use this biscuit recipe for the Cheddar Bay ones and for your plain biscuits over those two. It's not that they weren't good, but this biscuit recipe is far more authentic to your actual biscuit like before. I mean, like this one, you know what I'm saying? I took a knife and I split it right down the middle, and I was able to make like a sausage biscuit, you know? I mean, you could take cheese, you could take even more cheese, make a cheddar biscuit out of it. Well, it is a cheddar biscuit, but I mean, you know, make it like a buttermilk biscuit and then stuff cheese on the inside. Because you can actually do that. You can get a cheese, I mean, you can get like a cheese cube and just stick it on the inside and kind of mold it around there because it does stick together. Or if you've made some jam, like in my cookbook, how I created those jams for the peanut butter and jelly cup and the thumbprint cookies, you can use those jams and, I mean, put it inside the biscuit. Like, it works well and it's sturdy. And as I said earlier, like, I really recommend you just like not doing the color and just going with 350 degrees Fahrenheit, because it produces a far more fluffier biscuit. Like when you bake it at 400 trying to make it golden, it almost like, because the buttermilk starts to bake out of it, it almost produces almost an eggy texture to me. Like, I don't know, maybe, I mean, if you tried yourself, you can please comment or hit me up on Instagram and just let me know. But to me, it produces more of an eggy flavor. It loses that fluffiness and it gets very firm. It doesn't taste eggy at all. Don't get me wrong on that one. It doesn't taste eggy at all. But just the texture, you can visually see the difference in the texture. But that's if you want it golden. I mean, you know, people care about, you know, the look of it. But as I said, you know, if you don't want to use buttermilk, then just don't make the recipe, because you're looking at the fat and the water content. Now that alters baking. The reason why butter works so well in baked goods is because it has a very high fat content. But what works even better are things like coconut oil, olive oil, and if you didn't care about your health, things like vegetable and canola oil. Why? Because those things are 100% fat, and fat brings moisture. Correct me if I'm wrong, butter sits around 85% fat and then 15% water. Buttermilk is it's somewhere around 90 to 95% water. But see, if you just swap it out for something like a nut milk, it's pretty much water on a molecular level. I won't get too much deeper into it, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. The intro is now the outro, because only the true fans stay the whole time. I am Darius, the Sugarless Crystals, your sugar-free destination of YouTube. Enjoy me. I'm guilt-free. Indulge.